I'm telling you, you think that, that you're going to move somewhere warm and you're not going to have to deal with cold, but even out west in the desert, it's cold. It gets cold at night. I love the desert. That's where I spend a lot of time.
That's the motherland.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Good morning.
We're rolling. Hey, everybody.
Good morning.
Okay. Like it is really good morning. So Shane and I, we get the privilege of masterminding. Now, one day we are going to unpack exactly what we're talking about, because this is not like a small group where we're, like having coffee talk like we're going to do today.
Yeah, not a book club.
Not simply accountability. And this is what I want. And then reporting what we did. It is all of that. But the objectives are much deeper and wider. And so Felicha actually we really have been with her almost since day one. I mean, the three of us just have worked so closely together, and probably even without her realizing it, we kind of brought her into our mastermind. Yeah. And then with her knowing, we launched into a dedicated mastermind with a couple of other people for a year. And we're coming up on the end of that year. I can't even believe it. Felicia, it's been almost 2 years. The three of us have been on this journey together.
It has. And it surprised me when you said it the other day. I was like, no, yes, it has. Yes, it has.
Yeah, exactly. And so for those of you that don't know, Felicha is a counselor, but tell them a little bit more about the specificity of your work.
Okay. So, I went to Northeastern for my master's in counseling psychology. And I have been working in that field since, I don't even want to say, because it's making me feel old now. About 2010, 2008 in various degrees, but now I run a small, medium group practice where we focus on mental health, behavioral health counseling. We work very hard to be diverse and open, and we focus a lot on trauma-informed and solution-focused care.
And you're so good. You're so good at it. This is one thing I know, man, from the evolution of what we've seen, which we're going to talk about. But I couldn't think of two better people to be on here talking about how I got myself in a big old pickle and lost my business, and how we end up in these places, right? So this was many years ago. And so I really wanted the three of us to come on, share our own experiences, but also talk about what really is business. What is it really? Where does business success come from, and what actually will cause a business to fail? Because I'm going to tell you right out of the gate, I was a product of corporate America. I had great experiences there, man. I learned a lot of what not to do. I had great mentors. I was given opportunities I should have never been given. And the reality is people took a lot of risks on me and invested a lot of training in me. And I know, Shane, you had the same experience.
Yeah, very much.
Felicha, I'm sure along your journey, there's been a lot of input from other people.
Absolutely.
Right? Both positive and negative, that have brought us to this place at this time of our lives together. And what I know is the one big obstacle, legit, concrete, like brick and mortar obstacle for me, was a business that I actually lost because, you guys, I believed that if I worked hard enough for a certain period of time, I could somehow graduate from working in my business. And this is the vision I had. Now, I was very young, so please do not judge. I am older. I have a little bit more wisdom. I have a lot more bruises that helps me to walk carefully in the world, more carefully than I did at this time. But here is this vision I had, that I would have this business, and I would be able to just come in and be like, here I am. I'm the owner. I'm collecting my money. Everybody's happy. Everything's running without me here. I travel, and I'm a lady that lunches. And don't forget, I'm also over here doing all these good works in the world. And this was my vision, that I was somehow going to be like this wealthy matriarch in business and that all this money was just going to be coming into my mailbox and that every employee would be happy if I just worked hard enough and I got I hired the right people, or I just hired people to do all the stuff I didn't want to do. Shane, you and I were talking about this beforehand. I mean, we can so relate to this myth, right?
Big time. Big time.
Crazy.
I wanted to get to the place where if I could just get to the place where I could this is what I just kept thinking. If I could just hand this off. And that was the myth I was buying into, was there comes a point where I can truly hand everything off and step back and have the type of experience that you just were describing. And that's just not true. It's just not true.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, my first real experience with this is I hired this woman. Man, dynamite. She was a dynamite salesperson. She was very quiet. And so I was like, okay, well, since you can sell so well and you've got all this time on your plate and you're a full-time employee, then I'm going to teach you how to do some of these operational things of the business. She was like, no, that's not what you hired me for. And I was like, what? I have an employee and I still have to come to work full-time? I mean, let's just be real honest. I've even had clients say to me, Amy, all of this operational stuff, like managing the business and marketing and sales and the numbers and even how I'm going to, get the product to the people, like the delivery process. I've even had people say to me, I don't want to do that. I just want to sit on my stool and the people just come and hear me teach. And I'm like, me too, brother, man. Okay. Full disclosure, me too. But the reality is I actually walked out that desire and lost almost everything. I almost ended up living in my car. Hi. Okay. I will come and deal with her. Thank you. So, nobody is bleeding and there is not any other bodily issues. So have fun. Everybody's good. Okay. So, this was just the reality. Now, this is what I learned, right? So I had this major failure. I sought out a mentor who was in my life, but look, if you don't actually go and make yourself available to be mentored and to be taught, people are not, especially successful people, are not going to chase you down. Right. So I had this older gentleman in his 70s. He sat on a board of an organization that I was a part of because that was what was in my headspace, right? I'm going to be this matriarch of business, and we do we have civic duties that we perform. And so anyway, he was on one of these boards and he and I kicked up a friendship. And I just called him and said, this ship is going down. I don't know how I did it, but I've done it and I need help. And he very quickly brought me into his home, set me down with his wife, and we had a real legit conversation. And this is what I heard him say. Now, he was a multimillionaire several times over, built things and sold them, built business, sold them. And he was living a pretty lean life. And so that was the first thing I observed is, okay, this is a lean lifestyle. You're not you don't have a private yacht and a private jet plane, but you could, but you don't. Right. And so I was like, okay, so what is the secret? And he just very clearly, the first place he went to was, how did I manage the business? And then how did I measure the management? He never asked me about my marketing tactics. He didn't ask me what my sales conversion was. He didn't ask me about the products that were selling the best. Those were not the first questions he asked me. Those are good questions. Don't get me wrong. But I ask those questions all the time, but they were not the first questions. So I really feel like this needs some unpacking, and we're going to unpack it in two different lanes. But you need to understand that these lanes cross each other a lot. They really are not separated. And I don't even know if lanes is the right word. Shane, how would you describe these two things we're going to talk about today?
So I do think there is alignment. It's more like they could be lanes, but if you've ever been to Oakland, the bridge from Oakland to San Francisco, it's two lanes, right? Like there's a top and a bottom, right? And
Yes.
so they're always intersecting at some point. People are coming on, people are getting off, and there's this, you can literally just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that's kind of the way in which this rolls. We cover the same territory in both directions, and we commute back and forth between those two directions, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's congruency, there's alignment, there's commonality, there's dependency. All of these things are there between these two foundational pieces we're going to unpack a little today.
Yeah. And the first foundational piece, it's so good. I just love how you clarify my messy vocabulary. The first and best practice is good management, not just managing the business, but if we're going to be owners and leaders, we have to be the premier manager. People are only going to come as far, and they actually are never going to go as far as we do. So we have to continually demonstrate good management. Now, I do not want you to tune me out here. Those two words, good management, are so overused. Your brain probably just went into habituation. Come on back. Just come on back to the conversation, because we're not going to talk about 100 ways to manage your business, or 5 or 4 or 3. We're going to talk about 2. And so here's what I mean when I talk about good management. It's a very simple definition. It is simply the coordination of certain tasks and task outcomes as it relates to the day-to-day operation of the business you manage. So simply by coordinating certain tasks that result in a certain outcome, we can then organize the business and the people and the resources to accomplish this outcome that we want. Now, within that coordination, we also have to be really willing to take responsibility for the coordination of the tasks to the outcomes as it relates to the day-to-day operation of the business you manage. So for example, if you have a sales goal as a business owner or as a leader of $100,000 this month, okay, let's just make it real simple, and you have failed to coordinate the product management, like the product development of what you're doing, especially as a service provider. So like Felicha, as a counselor, she still has to coordinate the tasks to get to that $100,000 for her staff, to know where they're going, what to focus on, because as she directs them down that first foundational course, she's saying, you know what, guys, this is the goal, is to help X amount of people this month, new people that are going to help us bring in X amount of new revenue this month. And that's going to require these tasks being done. And I'm going to take responsibility by inspecting what I expect from those tasks. Is this clear?
Tracking.
Yep.
Okay. Now, if you believe, like I did, that we as the owners and the leaders do not have to be the manager, we can hire that person in, then you're already losing. We've already bought the lie, just like I did, and you're already in a sinking ship. You just don't know it yet. Ownership and leadership requires that you and I be the best managers first, manage what the best looks like practically, and then be able to duplicate the parts that are repetitive to someone else to do, and also be able to manage their tasks within the day-to-day business. Is this clear, Shane?
Yes. Yeah. And there is a point in time where a business grows to the place where an owner may have a general manager. But the reason that this idea of you have to be the best manager first, if you aren't the best manager first, you're turning over your livelihood to someone that you have no way of determining if they are keeping the business on track or not. You are dependent on that person at a level that really does handcuff you in your potential for the future growth of the business, because you're just in the dark. You're blind.
Yeah.
You're dependent on what they tell you. You know, I've seen
Well,
owner after owner get into the same place. And it is like, well, you know, I mean, I trusted that person because, I mean, they were more experienced than I was. They were whatever more than I was. So I figured they knew, like, well, that's the problem. You weren't the expert when you handed it over. You got to become the expert before you can hand anything over.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I've heard this or it was just divine wisdom, which I'm going to say somewhere in my life, I've heard it before, that success does not flow up. Like you cannot hire below you anyone that, if you're the owner or the leader, anyone you hire is a subordinate and they know it.
Yes.
They know that. And so they operate already in that way. It doesn't mean that they are less than you or they lack competency, but human behavior is I submit to you.
Yeah.
You are the title.
Positional authority. Yeah.
Yes, it is positional authority. And it's a very ancient demonstration of what authority actually is. As a matter of fact, Jesus Christ, arguably the most talked about leader of all time, this is what he said: I can do nothing by myself, but only what I see my Father do, because what the Father does, the Son does also. Now, I'm not going to get into theology here, but just go study that. Whether you believe in him or not, just go study Jesus related to God, because what you're going to find is, wait a second, the two are one. So how is he waiting for the Father to demonstrate something? Because it is positional leadership. It's positional authority. And it was demonstrated, and it is in all of us. It is how we are created. So the second part of good business management is good operational management. You see, there isn't like several different levels of management. Operational management encompasses the business. Okay. It includes things like setting the course, keeping people on that course, holding employees accountable to their job descriptions and contractors. It also involves operational management, involves the systems that you feel you need to achieve the highest return on investment of money and time, that everything is contributing: the employees, the contractors, and the systems of technology. So if you are to set a strategic course, you must know what will be at the end of that course. So how do you know that? Well, you have to reverse engineer the highest valued outcome. Well, what is that? It's the financial return on investment of all resources, including labor. That's it. So business starts with one number: return on investment. That's what it is. It starts there. And then there should only be a few other key performance indicators. And if you go back and listen to any of our previous episodes, which I will link below here, where we talk about KPIs, and that, look, a key performance indicator is a metric, but not all metrics are a key performance indicator. So you have to understand that you only need to know a few numbers, like 5 or 6. It's not 50 or 60 like some explicit business consultants want you to believe, which means you just need them and then you need to keep needing them. No, as the owner and the leader, you should get to a point of full autonomy, but along the line, you need some help. This is why we do this, is because we understand that helping and mentorship is something that is important. And look, operational management includes marketing, advertising, sales, product distribution, product development, client satisfaction. It includes your gross margin. It includes your expenses and your income. It is everything in there. Now, that sounds like a lot. And full disclosure, man, when I read that list, if I had read that 19 years ago, I would have fallen over and been like, there's no way. I don't have time to learn that. I don't want to learn that. But I'm telling you, sitting here today, it's only a few numbers. And when I know those numbers, it changed everything for me. I mean, I now can predict with certainty how my business is going to grow and by what percentage it's going to grow month over month which helps me determine yearly growth, which helps me plan money, plan investment, plan expenses, plan expansion. I no longer am concerned. I have the same certainty that an employee has. I know that I'm getting a paycheck. I know how much the paycheck is going to be. And on the months that I don't want as much money because I don't want to work that much, I don't. And the months that I want more money, I work more. I mean, it's just a very clear path that has given me great freedom. So to be a good manager and to be a good operational manager, you have to have a scoreboard, you guys. Like, otherwise, you're making decisions on all of these areas I just mentioned, on feeling, on perception, on somebody else's perception and feelings, on somebody else's financial analysis. Most people are just hoping and praying and wishing, and you don't have a light. And the light is the numbers that we're talking about. And that light that burns the brightest, that real North Star, is one number: return on investment. And then there's actually 5 numbers that roll up as we watch them of, are we getting closer to this? Because our feelings, it can be you can be in the 30 seconds left on the clock in the fourth, is it quarter?
Quarter. Yeah. That's right. That's right. You're doing great.
I'm trying to make a sports analogy, and I'm really not a sports gal. Okay. But I can feel the anticipation when I go to these sporting events, when it's coming down and our team is just inches away from winning. Now they know how they're going to win, because all those people with the headsets and the weird boards, and they're covering them up with their hands. North Star, it's all numbers.
They're called
it's all
coaches.
Yes, yeah, those guys.
Those weird people, headsets, clipboard.
That's
coaches,
right.
coaches.
The secret maps.
That's great. Yeah.
It's all numbers, and they can, with certainty, almost precision. If you've ever watched Moneyball, you will know with precision. Isn't that the movie? It is. The baseball. Yeah. Okay. I want to make sure. And you can know with precision exactly how you're going to end in 30 seconds. That is what we have. And I can tell you that business success is not based it's not based on, like, the foundation of it is not how much time you spend on social media, how much content you put out, how many videos you do, not what you look like and your style, or if you have a ring light or you don't have a ring light, or if you have fancy equipment, like recording equipment, or not. If you have a podcast, if you write a book, those things are not, if you have great email campaigns, if you have multiple product lines, or you only have one. What it begins with, business success first, is based on you and me, the leaders and owners and responsibility takers, adopting the idea that we will forever have to be the best manager in the room and be the owner and leader. We cannot put business success on someone else or a system of technology. And I can tell you, just from a very high level celebrity status of people that do this well, you have Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan was both offense and defense. You have Mike Tyson, which I'll tell you that story one day, who was heavyweight and lightweight. You have Bill Gates, who was software and hardware. The best minds in the market, and the most successful. If you want to measure success by money alone, the wealthiest people on the planet mastered working in the business and on the business. And they understood that business started with one number, and then they moved everything into this narrow path to get there. And so I'm telling you, I want you to understand that this is where it begins. I truly believe that systems run businesses and people run the businesses. And I know that Felicha, when you and I met, and we actually met through LinkedIn.
We did.
I just can't believe it. I just can't. When I was looking at how long ago it was, I was like, it's been that long, because it's been a great journey. But we've had to have some hard conversations, And when we first met, there was some things happening that were leading you to a path that you did not want. And so I would just love for you, if you're willing to, full disclosure, just share as much as you want to about where you were and what you had to do as a good manager, the things you had to adopt in that mindset in order to get where you are today, which is like beyond
crushing it.
Leaps and bounds different.
Yes.
So the funny thing is, when we first met, it would have, to someone who's outside, would have looked as if I was having a lot of success, right? I was able to transition from kind of a offered space, like a free offered space, to an actual office space. I had a couple of employees that had decided to come along and work at the business, one full-time and a couple of other part-times. The first location we were at looked very nice, so it gave the appearance of outward success, right? But the actuality of the situation was I wasn't paying myself like at all. I paid my staff everything, and that was like my biggest concern, was making sure that we're providing good care and the people that I'm now responsible for are taken care of. I can take care of myself later. I can pay myself later. I just have to keep going and make sure we get over this hump. And although perseverance is important, and perseverance is something that I think all owners and all leaders need to have, the way that I was persevering was not beneficial to the actual growth of the business. So when we met, we had this really tough conversation, and you asked me, well, do you want to change how your business is going or not? And then the second question you asked me was, how long do you think you can keep your doors open if you keep going like this? And I was like, ooh, that's a good question. And the real answer was maybe a good 4-6 months if I really burnt myself out. And at that point, we really had to look at what my measurements were, right? And at that time, I didn't have any. I had, okay, this is how many people are coming looking for services. This is how many people I have that can provide those services. And that was it, right? As long as somebody called in and said, hey, we want to start, then we got them started. I didn't keep track of, on average, how long they stayed. I didn't keep track of what the insurance reimbursements are, because we get most of the reimbursements from insurances. I didn't keep track of what they were supposed to be paying. I didn't keep track of the lead generators and see if they were actually generating things. So when we had these conversations, it was like I had some success, right? I was able to get the doors open and turn lights on, but I wasn't going to be able to keep the lights on for a very long time. So after we started working together, we first had to focus on getting myself more organized. And if you know me in my life today, I still don't look all that organized, but at the very least, I know what I'm talking about when it comes to, on average, how many clients are we serving? On average, how many clients are coming in? Which lead generators are actually producing the leads? What are the cost of those leads? How much am I paying for the digital marketing? Did I hone those skills? Did I hone those keywords enough that I can actually turn down what I'm actually paying? Or if I want more, I can just turn them back up. How am I connecting? How am I following through on making sure we are getting reimbursed, making sure the claims go through? So again, my day-to-day life, I'm always like here. But at any given time, I can say, okay, so this month we're about here. This month we should probably produce around here. So this month should leave about this much net. This month should probably come around. Ooh, those numbers look weird. Why did that happen? And being able to look back and have these conversations. And I have to say, I did very much subscribe to, like, if I just persevere and I go hard, I will actually get to that point where I can actually sit back, and I can sit back a little bit, but it's never going to be. And it's funny having these conversations with family. It's like, you're still seeing clients. Of course I'm still seeing clients. Shouldn't you be like, let other people handle that? Shouldn't you just kind of sit back and think about how to plan? And like, yeah, I do that too. So
yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. And you truly have completely revolutionized every outcome and you're expanding. Are you working on location 3?
Yes, location 3.
Location 3. The accountant said to you, you have to spend this money, Felicia. Like, you have to spend the money. So now you're like buying properties and creating these streams. There's another stream that you also created of reoccurring revenue, and it's a tax, and it's helping you with your taxes. Like, this is what is possible. She didn't change how she counseled. She didn't change the name. She didn't change the logo. She changed how she was looking at the business, how she was managing the outputs of the business. And then she started to understand, these numbers are telling me a story. What are they saying? And you have been it has given me such energy to come alongside of you and just see this transformation, because this is what is possible, and it's awesome. But one thing that also I thought was interesting that you said, and I want to get into it quickly, is the second part of those lanes that Shane was talking about with the bridge, is that, and how they intersect. The second foundational truth of business success, and what really is at the core of any business, is this idea of principle thinking. So Elon Musk was actually asked about how his thinking has led to his success. And this is what he said: this is a powerful, powerful way of thinking, but it's not easy to do. Well, what was he talking about? If you look at his 2013 TED Talk, the billionaire entrepreneur revealed his secret sauce. I love when people always think they got some secret. Look, there really is no business secret. We're telling you right now, this is what it actually is. The secret sauce to achieving extraordinary things, he calls first principles thinking, which is some decision-making strategy in which you boil things down to their fundamental truths and then reason up from there. Hello, reverse engineer, as opposed to reasoning by analogy. So principle, as defined, is a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or a behavior or a chain of reasoning. Now, remember, systems run businesses, but people run the systems. So how you make decisions is very important. So these two lanes we're talking about, first is from a management standpoint, strictly starting with one number. The second part of these foundational truths, which there's only 2, is principle. Principle making decisions from principles is by far the thing that is driving the leader. So I want to talk about real quickly with the two of you, these 3 big principles that I see the most from really great, successful leaders. And the first one is the principle of honesty. Now, would you guys agree that honesty is rewarded and dishonesty pays a high price?
Yes. Starting with your credibility.
Yes. And I believe that this principle gets its origin from these belief systems that we put in place early on, and our experiences and all of the environments and the things that we've been affected by. I know my own issues as a business owner and that failed was I had dishonest practices because I was afraid of losing things. So this showed up in like sales conversations. It showed up in how I was actually looking at the numbers. I would literally lie to myself because it made me feel better. So the fear that I didn't follow the latest and greatest tactic or business scheme because I was going to miss out or lose money. So I was just saying yes to everything. And here's what happened. I chose this way of being dishonest, and it appeared to me to be the fastest way. But what I did not see was that it would cost me a very high price, which was my integrity. So I compromised a lot. I got what I wanted, but I ended up losing it all. So Felicia, as a counselor from your experience, what are some of the beliefs that people hold to that cause them to lie or to be deceptive?
I think probably the biggest one is the expectations that people have placed on them, right? Whatever labels people have given, whatever expectations people have put on. If you look at it, it's also culturally specific. I do want to say that. But if you look at some of the expectations, you can look at birth order, for example, right? The first one is the responsible one. The first one is maybe a little bit more timid because there was a lot of pressure put on them, but they're the responsible ones. They are able to kind of hold things together and be the example. The middle child is the wild child, right? They're not the first, they're not the last. They're kind of just lumped in there, so they kind of do whatever they can to kind of get that attention. And then the youngest one may tend to be babied a little bit more and maybe not as ambitious because everyone was giving them something, right? So whether we know it or not, labels have been placed on us and expectations have been placed on us. So when we actually internalize those expectations, there are limitations to what we see or what we believe or how we act because, oh no, I'm a morning person, so I have to get up early in the morning. I have to attack everything at 4 or 5 a.m., which if you genuinely are, that's great. But if you're not, you're putting yourself in a opposition to your body's natural rhythm. So you're trying to force yourself to do something, and your body's literally saying, no, I can't do this. So you could be up at 4 or 5 a.m., but you're not accomplishing as much as you could if you just waited till maybe 6 p.m., 7 p.m. to actually do this because your brain is kind of firing on all cylinders then.
That's so good.
Really good.
I think that's the first and probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. Expectations. And what a great example of birth order, man. So good.
That's good.
Shane, when you're working with these, I mean, you work with some pretty high level leadership at the highest. I know that you've got several people in the Chick-fil-A world, and you've got some SaaS company CEOs and that kind of thing. What do you repeatedly see that keeps a leader from choosing honesty over deception, or honesty over that will keep them from choosing honesty over deception?
Yep. So I think there's two things that come to mind. One is the misconception that you can get buy-in by only sharing half the truth. So they have this need to marshal an organization in a direction, and they feel so pressured with time. Like there's opportunity costs if they don't take action now. There's revenue loss if they don't. There's all this pressure. So they think like, okay, I'm not manipulating people, which is really what's happening. I'm giving them what they need to buy in. So that's one issue that I see people struggle with. The second thing that I see people struggle with is they deceive themselves, and that makes it very easy to deceive other people. So they excuse themselves very easily against goals. They'll excuse themselves against, all of these different things that only they can be responsible for. And then that makes it just even easier to go out and put a mask on, be someone who they aren't truly at the core. Right?
Yeah.
But people are wise. People are wise.
So good.
We catch on to this stuff. I guarantee you, if I could spend 6 weeks with you, I'll know who you are without you having to say anything.
Yes.
And that is true for people in your organizations. So yes, the deceit truly is in our own eyes. We feel like we're so wise, and we're not. People get it.
Yeah. So good. And I think that is that, man, that idea of half truths for buy-in sake. Wow. Okay. We'll have to park that and unpack that another day. But the second principle that I'd like for you guys to speak into is the principle of accountability. Now, this is one of this, these are the top 3 principles, you guys. Like, these aren't the end all be all. This is just what I see consistently demonstrated in the successful mentors and leaders that I've been honored and privileged to be up close to. And accountability, as it's defined, is an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or to account for one's actions. Now, follow me here, because in my past, when this major failure happened for me, shame and guilt kept me from going and asking someone else to look at what I was doing, going and asking somebody else's input, going and saying, hey, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'm terrified. Right? Shane, what do people say to you in your coaching sessions that point to this belief that they're ashamed or guilty?
So it goes back to excuses. I made this commitment, I did not follow through, but so then there's all these excuses, and it's everything that is beyond their control. That's one of the things. I tell you, as I was thinking through this, as you were explaining it, I think one of the places where this shame and guilt and whatever comes up is an unrealistic expectation of perfection. Like, people put themselves in this spot where they set unrealistic goals to begin with. Like, I'm going to do this for 365 days, and they go 3 days in and they blow it one time, and they evaluate that failure across the whole year, and they quit. Like, okay, well, I'm terrible. So they have this unrealistic expectation of perfection versus a continuous pursuit of excellence, right? It's like, okay, I want to do better today than I did yesterday. And I want to do that every single day. It's like, okay, well, then I can look back and I can see progress. But if I'm judging myself, which is what this really does come down to, there's this judgment that we are putting on ourselves. And I go back to Felicha's point about, all these expectations that we carry forward into that moment from our past, right? And we judge good or bad, right? Like, that's not, and so that to me is where there's a lot of this is rooted, is in this pursuit of perfection that's unrealistic, and it produces that shame response.
Well, and we have like a minute and a half left. I really want to honor the time of Shane and Felicha. And so, Felicha, what I want to do, you guys, is we are going to record a second part to this conversation. Awesome. If you guys are on board, I just keep putting Felicha on the spot. So I'm just like, will you please, I'm asking you right here on camera, live, will you please record part 2 with us?
No, and absolutely not.
Thank you. And thank you for your contribution and for you being here. And Shane, you are amazing. I just want to end this part 1 within this second principle of accountability by answering the question, how do we know we're being accountable? Well, first we have to ask ourselves and give other people permission to ask us penetrating questions about our relationship to things and to people that are directly under our leadership. Like, are my bills being paid on time? Well, this is a relationship to the creditor and to your relationship to money. Do our employees, our internal customer and our external customers see us as people that do what we say and say what we mean? And this all shows up in reviews. And when you ask really good penetrating questions of your internal clients, you can get a really good gauge on how you are showing up here. And lastly, do we put others' needs ahead of our own? There's this big message that tells us that we need to know what problem we solve. Well, they're right. But more importantly, we need to know who we solve it for and why we solve it. And just as we're wrapping up part 1, we'll conclude with part 2 in the next episode. Philippians 2:15 says, consider yourselves more important than yourselves. Consider others more important than yourselves. And also remember that systems run your business, but you, the people, are running the systems. And we'll conclude with the third and final principle and some final thoughts in the next episode. Awesome. Thanks, you guys.